Hello and welcome back to Speaking Spurs with me, Kieran, talking all things Tottenham Hotspur and occasionally England throughout the Euros. Apologies that no video has gone up yet with the game review, but however, with the Christian Eriksen incident, I decided to delay until we found out more about whether Christian was going to be okay. Thankfully, he's stable, seems in relatively good spirits, so we can move forward with things. Just want to shout out to Simon Kjær, the Danish captain, and also Anthony Taylor, the referee, who stopped the game quickly. They got him into a recovery position, made sure he didn't swallow his tongue. The Danish players then formed a wall around him, so there was some privacy for the medical team that came onto the pitch very quickly. Also want to thank the fans in the stadium once the game had re-kicked off, very respectful of one side shouting Christian, the other side shouting Eriksen. Many players around the world have done tributes. Lukaku with his goal celebration. Sonny did 23 with his goal celebration, and many more. And the world of football has just kind of got right behind Christian Eriksen, so that is really good news. And for me, it kind of hit home a little bit more because I was actually at the Fabrice Muamba game at White Hart Lane where that happened, and I can tell you now it is one of the worst feelings to be in a stadium when that sort of thing happens. It really hits home that even these super athletes can just, have a moment like that. And thankfully everything was done quickly, professionally, and because of that, Christian Eriksen is still with us today. So wish him and his family all the best for the future. I mean, hopefully he can get back to playing football, but we know in these situations, usually it means that is the end of their footballing career. But most importantly, he's still with us. So, yes, there will be the England review coming up. Hopefully I can do it after this. But today is an update on Spurs, so we're going to talk about, the manager. There's some potential incomings and outgoings, a bit on Daniel Levy and Patrici. So we'll start with the manager update. Fonseca apparently is set to be announced soon. Now, the word soon means absolutely nothing to Spurs fans because we hear this all the time. Soon, 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 soon. And it's a bit like that old thing with tomorrow never comes. But I'm pretty sure this one's going to get over the line. We haven't been linked with anyone else at all since the Fonseca rumours or true stories broke. So that one I would expect to happen, and we can finally stop with this manager merry-go-round, circus, mess, whatever you want to call it, and we can get settled. Now with that, Fabio Patrici has been confirmed at the club, as I believe it's general manager is his official title, but as I said in the previous video, I don't care about the title, we just need some structure. So he's had an interview with the guy that does our interviews in-house. And normally when new people come in, it's a very generic interview where they say certain things, everyone says the same thing, and you get a bit bored listening to him. But with Patrici, there's something about him. He's quite charismatic. He was very passionate, smiley, seemed in a very good mood, very easy to talk to, answered every question well. So I think it's something we can look forward to. He seems a very, very passionate man about football, so there was just something about the interview that made me feel comfortable and quite excited about him coming into the club. So that's a good one to look forward to, and hopefully him and Fonseca have a good relationship and can help move us forward to the next level. So understanding Patrici's role. Essentially what happens is he will come into the club. He won't just be dealing with incomings and outgoings of players. He'll be involved in a lot of the day-to-day run-ins of the club. So in his interview, he was talking about not just the first team, but the women's team, the youth structure. The idea of this is that he's going to come in and help us build the identity of how Spurs should play. So let's take Barcelona, for example. In Barcelona, the way they play in the youth academy is exactly the way they play at every level and in the first team. And the idea of that is you keep the identity of the club. Everybody knows their role, understands how they're meant to play. Now that's what we want to try and create at Spurs. And it makes it easier when we're looking for managers, because instead of this situation where should we go for Conte? Should we go for Mourinho? Should we go for Pochettino? 3 managers that all play in very different ways, like different styles of player. The idea in this is the club has an identity. We have a set of player recruitment of candidates that we would look to that fit within the roles that we specifically need. And then you bring in managers that essentially, build the dressing room, atmosphere. They have a good connection with the fans. They are an excellent coach that can coach players and improve them. I mean, obviously they'll have some sort of input in players that they like, but those players will have to fit the mould of Tottenham Hotspur and not the manager, which is why someone like Conte wouldn't have worked. He doesn't traditionally last long in clubs anyway. 2 years is about his average, and then he moves on. Tends to fall out with the board and stuff. It requires a lot of money. So I think for the long term, Patrici is probably the right move right now to try and get us back to that identity that we associate with Tottenham Hotspur. You know, flair play, nice attacking play. We always have like that one silky player. David Ginola is one that comes straight to mind. Gaza, so Luka Modric, Gareth Bale, Dimitar Berbatov. So like through our history, we've had like these great outstanding players, and hopefully with the new identity, we can have many more star players throughout the squads. So yeah, that's his role, and I was very, very, very happy with his interview. Now, apparently, even though he's not due to join us until the 1st of July, because he's still at Juventus sorting things out, he has kind of been working for us behind the scenes. There's been players told that they're not going to be needed at the club anymore and they can start looking for new clubs. There's also been lots of links with players, like how true they are, we never know. Look, until there's something completely concrete, I don't believe too much of it. We will talk about a couple of them today, but we'll move on to our own players. Apparently, Serge Aurier, who has come out publicly and spoken saying that he's at an end of a cycle, there is an agreement with the club that he can leave at the end of the season if the right offer comes in. Apparently, he is close to rejoining PSG to link up with Mauricio Pochettino, the guy that brought him into Spurs. Now, the amount that we're going to receive, I'm hearing many different reports. 20 million is the number that's been batted about. I don't know if that's pounds or euros. Then there's somebody said 13 million, 15 million. Like, I'm sure whatever it is, there'll be a deal where we can potentially make as much money as possible. So that'll probably be something like, say it is the 13 million. It'll be 13 million with the potential to rise to something, I don't know, 17, 18 million based on achievements. So appearances, assists, goals, clean sheets, I don't know, whatever. Daniel Levy will pack that with what he needs to get that deal over the line that will continue to bring us money in if we don't get the initial fee. So, I mean, he's in his last year of his contract anyway. And I kind of think it is the right time for him to move on. Although under the right manager, I still believe he could have been a great asset to us. Even though he's got the odd mistake in him, unfortunately, they're usually big mistakes, which is, I think, why we find it so hard to praise him. So that's him. Another one, Moussa Sissoko. Apparently, there's been links with him going to Napoli. Now, he's in the final year of his contract. I believe he is one of the players that we have the option to extend it by a year. So I think Napoli are looking to maybe bring him in on loan, which would suit us in a sense because he's on big wages, so that gets him off the wage bill for a year. I wouldn't be surprised if Daniel Levy was clever, triggered that year extension, sends him out on a loan, and then maybe says to Napoli, look, you can have him for, and then, you know, some sort of cut price fee, just so we get something. So that one's a possibility. And there has been question marks over Moussa Sissoko recently anyway, in terms of his future. And I definitely think it's the right time for him to move on. He's not quite the player that we had a couple of years ago. Like when he first signed, it took him a while to adjust and get himself into Tottenham in the way we wanted. Then he gave us a big couple of years and he's been a good servant. He comes into the squad. He's a good rotation player, does the job that we ask him to do defensively. Going forward, doesn't really offer us much whatsoever, which I think is part of the problem. But I think as he's getting older, his pace is starting to go, his power on the ball, his decision making is getting worse. So look, it's the right time to move on. He's done what he needs to do. Now, I haven't actually spoken about yet Juan Foyth. Obviously, you'll all know by now, he has left the club. He had a very good season at Villarreal. He won the Europa League. Unai Emery absolutely loves him. He played predominantly as a right-back or holding midfielder for them. We know he can play centre-back as well, and he did have a couple of games at centre-back. For me, I'm not happy about it, really. I liked Foyth. I think he's very good on the ball. And I've had many discussions with people saying that I thought he could be a good holding midfielder for us. He went to Villarreal, and it just goes to show that, he can. He's got that technical ability, but he's got the defensive awareness as well. And it's kind of like the situation where Dyer ended up moving there, but I think the difference is Foyth is much better on the ball than Eric Dyer. So we could have utilised him, but obviously they had the clause in the loan deal with an option to buy. And the only way that he wasn't going to go is if he was told he was guaranteed to start at Spurs. Why would you stay at Spurs when you don't have a real loyalty or affinity to the club? Like, at the end of the day, he's Argentinian. He's been at other clubs before us. We haven't really done anything special to give him a reason to stay. So for him, it makes sense. It makes perfect sense. Had another manager come in, say we had a manager appointed and they'd have come in and said, look, if you stay here, you're going to play at least 85% of the games, I think there is a chance he would have stayed. But ultimately, the decision was out of our hands and it was all down to him. He's decided to go. So I wish him the best for the future and hopefully he can fulfill his potential. But in a way, I'm just glad he didn't go to another Premier League team. So there you go. That one I'm not happy with, but I can understand completely why it's happened. And obviously it gets us some money in the door, which is much needed because we do need to reinvest in this squad. What else? So, apparently on the manager front, now you never know how real these things are. It was one that was not actually released in the press. Apparently we were talking to the Sevilla manager. I don't know how true this is, but he's done a good job with them. Would have been a good option. Nothing ever come to fruition on that. Apparently there was pretty much a deal agreed in principle. Never happened, so we'll move on from that. But had it happened, it would have been an interesting appointment. I do like the way he plays football, so that one's done. What else? There is interest in Sassuolo forward Domenico Berardi. Now, he is a good forward player. He can play anywhere across the front line. I think he scored 14 goals and 17 goals in his last 2 seasons, which is a very good return. And, Bergwijn hasn't really hit any heights on either flank. Gareth Bale is looking increasingly like he's not coming back. I think Real Madrid actually put something up on their social media with a picture of Bale where he's mainly in the Real Madrid kit, and then on the opposite side of his body it fades across into the Welsh kit. So it looks like they're behind him and they're probably going to try and convince him to stay, which means we are going to be looking for someone. And I still think Bergwijn is somebody that shouldn't go. He's got a lot of potential, but maybe somebody else over there to at least compete with him, because I think we are going to lose either Lucas or Lamela, or maybe even both of them, depending on what offers we get in and who we can have to replace them. There's been a few other links that I'm not really going to go into because they're not too concrete, although one I will mention, there's been a lot of centre-backs that we've been linked with. Obviously, Joachim Andersen, which is one I hope maybe comes to fruition. Somebody else from Juve, Demiral, very good player. Certainly wouldn't say no to him coming in the squad, but obviously there's a lot that needs to happen. I know there's going to be a lot of links with players from the Italian league, but we need to remember for homegrown players that there's going to have to be a lot of foreign players go out of the club for these other foreign players to come in, and we're going to need some English players to come back in. Now, whether that's going to be, Skippy and Sessegnon certainly fill that gap. That's going to be 2 English players coming in, but then at the same time we've lost Danny Rose, so I'm sure there's going to be more. If Joe Hart goes, that's another one. I don't think he'll go though. I think he'll probably stick around. He's not going to get first team football anywhere in the Premier League now, so I think he'll stay. He'll get games in the Cups and maybe the Europa Conference League. Yeah, I'll keep forgetting what it's called because it's just such a lovely competition to be involved in. What else have we got? Yeah, not much on that front. The only other thing I would talk about is Daniel Levy. He had an interview as well, and it was an in-house one. Now, it's got me in 2 minds, because doing an in-house interview means all the questions that are going to come up first. Then on the flip side, there's the fact that, look, Daniel Levy is not one to come out and talk. He's not the most confident in terms of interviews. I think we saw that in the All or Nothing documentary. It was a bit awkward when he was having to talk. So, it could come to that. Look, businessman, very good. Tottenham fan, apparently. Ability to do everything that's in our best interest as a club, on the fence. Financially, yes, he does. But in terms of progression, not too sure. But in that interview, the main talking points were things about the fact that the pandemic has hit us. And the one that was really interesting for me was the timing of the new stadium couldn't have been worse. And I kind of agree for a couple of reasons. Look, one, obviously the pandemic has hit us and we've lost like 200 million in revenue from, fans being allowed in the stadium, concerts and stuff that were booked, events. So we lost a lot of money that way. Look, the other one for me was when we had that last season at White Hart Lane and we went undefeated, I instantly turned around to my dad and went, if I was chairman right now, I would delay the new stadium. I would delay. And we saw the effects of it when we went into Wembley. Look, it's a bigger pitch for a start. And we knew we were going to have to get used to playing on a bigger pitch anyway, because it was going to be built, the pitch, to big dimensions. But the whole point was to increase capacity so we could have more fans in, which equals more revenue. It's better for European football to have the bigger pitch rather than having to keep resize the dimensions of the pitch. So that made perfect sense. However, it was always going to affect us because that season at Wembley, the fans are so far away from the pitch. The good thing about White Hart Lane is we were right on top of the players, which we are now at the new stadium. They've got us very close to the players, just with a better stadium and a bigger pitch. But that season away, I just think it was bad timing. If I was Daniel Levy, I'd have delayed everything and said, look, let's have another season at White Hart Lane, push on, and then we'll have the move. Because if we'd have won the league the following season, that would have been even more money coming in. We could have reinvested in the squad, maybe looked at players that were certainly more suited to playing on a wider pitch. I think it just would have helped us moving forward. So, yeah. Other things, he was talking about the finances, about how sometimes bringing in new players, if you get it wrong and they're expensive players, it can set you back a long way, which, I agree with to an extent. He did say that some of the managers actually didn't want certain players and expensive signings and whatnot. I don't know how much of that is true, but Daniel Levy has certainly gone out and supported us in ways before. A classic example, Rafael van der Vaart. Now, we managed to get him for an absolute steal from Real Madrid. An absolute steal, and he was a fantastic player for us. But he was somebody that wasn't asked for. We didn't know we necessarily needed at the time. And although we got him in on the cheap, his wages would not have been that cheap. So, Daniel Levy has supported us when he needs to, in a sense. He just hasn't reinvested to kind of get us over the edge. But he was talking about the fact that we need to be a sustainable club. And every penny we make goes back into the club. We do need to remember the training facilities and stuff that we have are world class. Some of the best in the world. So, Spurs Lodge, it would have taken a lot of money to build. They're always constantly adding to it, which costs money. There's no doubt about it. The stadium obviously has cost an absolute bucket load. I think they've managed to sort something out to rework the repayment structure, which is fantastic. But, on the short term, we've been hit hard. He did say there will be funds available for summer signings. Obviously, a lot of those funds are going to have to come from player sales as well. So I would expect a lot of movement out the door before we get some of the big boys in. So, yeah, it was an interesting interview. I think the most interesting part for me was when he was talking about the fact that he's been called all the names under the sun, and part of the reason why maybe he's criticised a little bit, and I do agree, is the fact that he's not very outspoken. He won't come out and criticise managers. He said that, getting rid of Pochettino was probably the hardest decision since he's been at Spurs. He loved Jose Mourinho. I think the Jose Mourinho thing didn't work out because he didn't back him well enough. But yeah, it was an interesting interview. He doesn't come out and speak much. He's not the most vocal. He's not the most confident. And he's right. He could come out and slag off managers and kind of save his own bacon, but he doesn't. And I do think sometimes there is that element that we don't see from him. Like, he's around the club a lot. He has breakfast down with the players quite a lot. He's always talking to the managers. I think as a chairman, he has a very good relationship with people inside the club on all levels. So I think inside the club, he's very personable. But I think to the fans, we don't see that because he's very hidden away from the camera. And I think maybe he doesn't like interviews because he doesn't know what's going to come up. And he's going to be asked questions that are maybe overly critical or questions where they lead him on to saying certain things. So, yeah, I think there's an element of humanity there. But I can also see why people think he's just given us a load of political BS. Because it's a well planned and thought out interview. So there's both sides of it. And it's one of them where we're never going to know. Because we're not inside. We don't see him every day. We're not in his head. But yeah, certainly it looks like we're actually going to get the manager this week. So look, good things to look forward to. On the Harry Kane front, we still don't know. Like, Daniel Levy pretty much said that he doesn't want to talk about it. Doesn't talk about players publicly. Because anything can happen really at this stage. Like, Harry Kane could hit the end of the Euros and be like, look, I want to leave. I want to move on and progress. But then he could, we could win the Euros. And he could say, I've won a major tournament now. Let me go back to Spurs and let's try and build there. And I want to win something there. Because first and foremost, he's an England fan. But he's a Tottenham fan. So once you've won one competition with, a team that you absolutely adore, why not try and replicate that with your club team? So we'll see. But yeah, some good news in there. There's a lot of links with players. As we get linked to more and more players and stuff becomes more concrete, I'll talk about that and give you updates. I'll try and give you lots of regular updates, and there'll be short videos. I mean, this one was a bigger one because of the Eriksen thing. We've delayed a couple of days in talking. So expect maybe 5 to 10 minute videos with just little updates coming into you on a more regular basis. So thank you very much for sticking around. If you haven't done so already, as I say all the time, subscribe to the channel. It massively helps. To show our support for Christian Eriksen, if you just give the video a thumbs up and maybe leave a comment about your favourite memory of Christian Eriksen in a Spurs shirt, that would be much appreciated. But thanks for sticking around, guys. Enjoy the rest of your week. It's coming home. But more importantly, come on, you Spurs.